G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. A movie called A Synchronicity of Spitfire books. And here we see a book called Spitfire, the Memorabilia Collection. And I gave my son a copy of this book for Christmas 2014. They call it the Memorabilia Collection because on the inside of the front cover there's a pocket. And inside the pocket we can see there's a few kitschy little souvenirs like a replica cigarette card from back in the days when cigarettes were packaged with miniature postcards so that the children of the house would pester the people purchasing to buy them. A replica of the front cover of Air Publication 1548. Part of a logbook. Wrong way around. And we're looking at September 1940, a Spitfire shoots down a Messerschmitt 110. Yeah, more interesting in the shop than it is when you get the thing home, to be honest. But I do like the way they managed to print the photograph on the cover of the pocket as well as on the pocket itself. So I found this just before Christmas in one of those little pop-up bookstores that appear mysteriously overnight the week before Christmas in what would otherwise normally be considered to be a closed shop. Here we see Reginald Mitchell, designer of the Spitfire. Here we see Reginald Mitchell's first racing seaplane. Reginald Mitchell, before he got the job designing that racing seaplane, he was a fully qualified locomotive engine designer. 5 years trained in steam. But he got better as he stuck around aeroplanes longer and longer. And these British books do like to harp on the connection between the Schneider Trophy racing seaplanes and the Spitfire, because the engine developments that Rolls-Royce went through making the Schneider Trophy seaplanes faster than anybody else's led to them knowing enough to be able to build the engine that produced 1,000 horsepower for the Spitfire Mark I. And it also taught Reginald Mitchell how to design things to go faster than that strut-braced flying boat that he won his first race with. So we just have lots and lots of these vintage wartime pictures and modern photographs of restored Spitfires, harking back to the old with descriptions. Famous photo, that K5054, the first Spitfire. Rosie the Riveter building Spitfires. Spitfires with cannons on them, evolution of the icon. So you get the picture. It's a lovely coffee table book, and I figured that because my son was raised as an aeroplane head, he might, on a particularly rainy day, take some time off from working long enough to sit down and want to read something that's got nothing much to do with anything in his daily life. So I thought this would be a good one for him. So yeah, I got my son a coffee table book on Spitfires for Christmas. And pop-up bookstores being as cheap as they are, I couldn't resist. I got myself a copy as well. That's how come I'm able to give you this book review of the Memorabilia Collection Spitfire book. Isn't it lovely? If you already know a fair bit about Spitfires, you won't learn anything new. If you heard that you had a rarely spoken to relative who used to fly Spitfires or had something to do with them, if you want your first book on Spitfires as a beginning aficionado, this will be pretty good for you. If you already know lots about them, it's just a bit shallower than I expected. I thought there would be more stuff that I did not already know. Its colophon, or final stroke, was this quote from Reginald Mitchell: "If anybody ever tells you anything about an aeroplane which is so bloody complicated you can't understand it, take it from me. It's all balls." Okay, so that was Warble Daddy's present to Warble's offspring. Now here's the funny bit. This is Warble's present from Warble's offspring. Put out by the Haynes Corporation, which once upon a time used to specialise in owner's workshop manuals for motor cars on the British market. I think the internet was hurting them. So they got RAF Battle of Britain Memorial Flight official permission back in 2007 to cobble together an owner's workshop manual for a Spitfire, just as a joke. Published in October 2007, reprinted in December 2007, February 2008, May 2008, February 2009, December 2009, October 2010, November 2012, and February 2014. So it's apparently quite a successful publication. Beauty, I thought. I'll learn something about the Spitfire that I didn't already know, because my go-to book on the aircraft that used to get around in those days and how they were put together is this numbered copy of the Fitters 2A class notes, which has its own serial number on it. And it's issue 3, 1941, so this is just before Japan got into the war. And it will tell me pretty much more than I want to know about Wirraway, Hudson, Battle, Anson and Oxfords. But there were no Spitfires in the RAAF in 1941. We had Wirraways. We had Lockheed Hudsons. We had Fairy Battles with the same engine as a Mark I Spitfire, but a 1,000-pound bomb, 53-foot wingspan and 3 people on board. We had Ansons and Oxfords, but we only get a drawing of the Oxford. Nothing on a Spitfire. So I figured this book should be good. Although I knew it was probably going to be missing a lot of the detail that the Fitters course notes ran to. How to repair things, as well as parts lists, hydraulic diagrams, control systems, pressure regulators. But anyway, this is the sort of thing you would expect to find in an actual workshop manual. In my imagination, at least. But let's get back to the actual book, which turns out to be a coffee table book. We have another look at Reggie Mitchell. We have another look at photographs of where people find Spitfires and restore them. These are all restored Spitfires. We have a look at the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight itself with its Lancaster and Spitfires, and got a couple of Hurricanes in there as well. For anybody who's interested in old aeroplanes and happens to be in the Royal Air Force, this must be the absolute peak plum posting. We have the Spitfire story. We have photographs that have been reprinted and reprinted and reprinted. There we go. We've got an actual technical drawing. Kind of, sort of, after a fashion. What they're showing us here is the hot air distribution to the gun bays, and the caption reads, this is the only explanation, a diagram showing the layout and components of the system ducting hot air from the radiators to the gun bays to prevent the weapons from freezing. Doesn't tell you anything about how to maintain it. But fair's fair, this is in the section where they're talking about the history of the Spitfire. Spitfire on floats, that's a rare one. It does appear in both of the books though. Operational history, the sea fires. We get onto the engine, the history of the Rolls-Royce Merlin, then the Rolls-Royce Griffin. We have fighter versus fighter comparative notes against a BF-109G and a Focke-Wulf 190A from 1943. We have a look at the armament increasing from the Mark 1 all the way up to the Mark 23 or whatever it was. We're not getting a whole lot on how to maintain any of these. We're halfway through the book pretty much. And finally, we get to the restore to flight, with the same sort of thing you'd find in a 1943 copy of Flight magazine, or perhaps an Observer Corps pamphlet. Once again, if somebody's never seen the insides of an aeroplane, this will be all new. Sort of book that you might want to give to an enthusiastic 12-year-old perhaps, although most of them are going to have internet access to much more detailed information than you're going to find here. Probably this is the sort of thing that can be given to middle-aged aeroplane fanciers by their friends and family who know they've got a bit of an interest and they want to be seen to be doing the right thing. Considering that I'm never likely to get my hands on a Spitfire unless I poke my finger through the fence at an air show, yeah, I'm the perfect sort of target for it, apart from the fact that I've got more knowledge than your average backyard armchair enthusiast, because I used to actually be involved in flying things. Not Spitfires, but flying things. So a nice book, but not a workshop manual. I think it's a good thing that everybody who bought the book enjoyed the fact that it was a novelty item, a curiosity, a stocking filler, perhaps. But yeah, it doesn't tell you how to maintain a Spitfire. It certainly doesn't tell you how to restore a Spitfire. What it does do is it gives you some idea of the vast funds required by anybody who wants to take on a Spitfire and get it to the point where it looks any good, let alone get it to the point where you can fly it. And there are people who take on that dream. I'm not one of them. But it's nice to have such a thing to look at and think about. It's nice to be able to dream. And I think it's a nice indication of the epigenetic meme of flying things that both of us were shopping at the last minute before Christmas. Both of us stumbled on the idea of a book on aeroplanes, and both of us gave each other a book on Spitfires. If nothing else, it indicates that the son knows the father and the father knows the son, and they both share similar tastes in literary entertainment. Some lovely photographs, aren't there? Just brilliant. A representative selection of surviving Spitfires and Seafires. Well, that would be back when the book was compiled, but it's been updated as late as February 2014, so there won't be too many changes to these appendices in the time since the book was published. So there we go. A synchronicity of Spitfire books with a comparison to a set of course notes for a fitter and rigger. Wobbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.